What's up, everybody? And welcome into The Lawyer You Know. It's a full weekend of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, as yesterday we talked together live about Johnny Depp's appellate brief. I'm actually recording this video before that, but this one is not live. I will answer a lot of your questions on that Friday when we speak, but today I wanted to break down the most recent document filed in Amber Heard's lawsuits with the insurance companies, because there are some very interesting tidbits to discuss in it. And vibes are high because it's Friday. It's 87 degrees and sunny here in Florida. Summertime was playing in my car on the ride up here. Little Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince. We're still allowed to like his songs, right? But the vibes are high. And I know it's winter, but it feels like summertime here. And the weekend is upon us. So we're going to enjoy this together. We're going to talk about it. It's some fun and funny things to talk about here. Lighthearted, insurance, lawsuits with Amber Heard. We're going to have a good time today. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video yesterday if you were able to make it out to that. If not, go ahead and check it out after you watch this video. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. If you're new here and you're just following up on this Johnny Depp Amber Heard content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and let me know that you're new here, because welcome. We try to enjoy learning about the law and talking about these cases and giving some legal angles and analysis to what's happening and why it's happening. And this document we're about to get into is interesting because it's a joint scheduling report, which means the lawyers all kind of got together and had to agree, or at least give their positions as to where they are on this case. As we know, there is some sort of consolidation happening. Are these 2 or 3 cases going to become one big case? And if so, what do we need to do to get there? And the judge has given them some orders to get there. And we're going to hear where each party, Amber Heard and each of the insurance companies, stands and what their positions are as far as consolidating these cases, depositions, and next steps to get this case moving, because it is going slowly and potentially may even halt to a complete stop on some of the counts. But let's get to what the document says together. So this is the joint scheduling report with the insurance companies and Amber Heard as the parties. And let's get into it. Pursuant to the court's October 21st, 2022 order on travelers' motion to consolidate, plaintiff and counter defendant travelers, defendant and counter plaintiff New York Marine, and defendant Amber Heard have met and conferred with regard to the scheduling for this matter by and through their undersigned counsel, and hereby submits this joint scheduling order. So now we're going to get each one of their positions, which are interesting. Ms. Heard's position first. Ms. Heard respectfully submits that it is premature to enter a scheduling order for 2 reasons. So, Judge, we're going to get together. We're going to work together. Thank you. And respectfully, let's talk about this scheduling order, but we think it's premature. We don't think we should even do a scheduling order yet. Why? First, no diversity of citizenship, which is key, and the court must have personal jurisdiction over somebody in order for this to be appropriate. Not subject matter jurisdiction, but personal jurisdiction over Amber Heard. And Ms. Heard argues now that she was not a resident of the United States when New York Marine filed its lawsuit against her. Well, what about now? Well, she is still now not a resident of the United States, and therefore the court lacks jurisdiction because the defendant is a United States citizen but has no domicile, meaning place of permanent residence or home in any state. She is stateless for purposes of 28 U.S.C. 1332. Such stateless status destroys complete diversity under Section 1332. Very interesting. What an argument. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I'm stateless. And technically that could be grounds for dismissal if there is no diversity of citizenship and the court does not have personal jurisdiction over Amber Heard. Now, is that true? Well, we'll find out. And did she try to cause that purposely to dodge these lawsuits? We'll find out. And it's interesting. We don't know this answer yet. And I'll tell you why a little later in the document. But if we did know the answer and we had more facts, that's when we'll get to the bottom of this. Second, this litigation should not go forward at this time. The continued prosecution of these actions is prejudicial to Ms. Heard's defense in the Depp v. Heard lawsuit, which is currently pending on appeal. So you may say, what do you mean? How is it detrimental? She already lost. They already went to trial. It's over. But it's still pending an appeal. And if she wins the appeal, there may be a new trial. And if there's a new trial, then she's still going to need at least Travelers to keep paying for her defense. But you would think if there's declaratory judgment that they don't actually have to do that, that they would want to know before this trial that probably isn't going to happen, but could happen a second time. Ms. Heard understands that Travelers does not oppose the request for a stay of the consolidated action, and that New York Marine does not oppose a stay to 3 of its 4 causes of action. So Travelers, who's already said we're on the hook for the defense, isn't going to argue. And they think this case should be stayed until there's a final judgment after all the appellate avenues are exhausted. New York Marine says that's fine. We'll stay 3 of our 4 counts, but not all of them. However, Ms. Heard understands that New York Marine opposes a stay to its first cause of action and as to the claims at issue in the Travelers lawsuit. Therefore, as she advised the other parties, Ms. Heard will file a motion to stay or dismiss these actions pursuant to Montrose Chemical Corp. And its progeny. In addition, Ms. Heard intends to move for judgment on the pleadings as to each of New York Marine's causes of action against her, meaning what was pled they cannot win, according to her. New York Marine's first, second, and fourth causes of action, which address New York Marine's duty to indemnify a judgment in the DEP lawsuit, are not ripe unless and until there is a final judgment in the DEP lawsuit. This is why everybody's kind of agreeing to stay, because even though there is a final judgment in this case, it's being appealed and nobody's paying that judgment. So if nobody's paying that judgment because of this appeal, the court doesn't necessarily need to determine who has to pay that judgment, because maybe that judgment will go away and we're going to have all this litigation and all this discussion and discovery and resources and time and money spent. And maybe this verdict will just go away if they win on the appeal, or maybe there'll be a new trial. So why do we need to know if they need to pay a judgment if they are not going to pay it yet? Given the appeal, there's no such final judgment. New York Marine's third cause of action, addressing New York Marine's duty to defend Ms. Heard in the DEP lawsuit, fails as a matter of law because the statute relied on, California Insurance Code Section 533, does not excuse an insurer of its duty to defend. Sounds like that's a disagreement as to what that statute says, what it means, and how it should be applied, which is the point of a lawsuit. Despite the above, New York Marine will not agree to postpone depositions of Ms. Heard's former defense counsel in the DEP lawsuit. Could that be Elaine? And team? Noticed for mid-November in the Travelers lawsuit. So they have some depots set. It's very difficult to set depots when you have 2 insurance companies and Amber Heard, and you're trying to set the depots of lawyers who are also busy trying cases, full caseloads. So once you get deposition dates, you do not want to lose those, especially if you're just staying the case or pausing the case, but you know you're going to end up having to litigate this case. You really don't want to lose those deposition dates. Ms. Heard believes that discovery should not proceed pending this court's determination on the jurisdictional issue and as to whether the consolidated actions should go forward given the appropriateness of dismiss or stay under Montrose. If necessary, Ms. Heard may move for a protective order regarding these depositions. Well, go ahead. If you want to move for a protective order, move for a protective order. If I was the court, there's no way I would continue those depositions, even if I was going to stay the case. Although many times if they do stay the case, they stay all discovery. But as difficult as it probably was to set these depositions, let them take the depositions. Maybe it'll move towards settlement, which judges like. Judges like to move cases towards settlement. All right, New York Marine's position. Personal jurisdiction over Ms. Heard. What do they think about that? New York Marine has received no evidence establishing that Heard was not a resident of the United States at the time New York Marine filed its complaint against her. And this is why we can't really have an answer to this yet. Because what does it mean? My goodness, my phone will not stop. What does it mean to not be a resident? What does it mean to not be domiciled? What does it mean to be stateless? Well, they're going to need to do some discovery on that. And there's going to need to be some proof as to whether or not she actually did reside in the United States or not? And was she just traveling? Was she on vacation? Does she plan on coming back? Does she have somewhere to come back to? Is she renting anywhere? We don't think she owns any houses here. She sold her house. Is the person she's living with in a different country also have a house here that they're traveling back and forth in? When's the last time she came here? Those are all fair game questions if you're going to make an argument like this. And New York Marine saying, we don't have any of that information. Second, Ms. Heard's request to stay this insurance litigation. New York Marine understands that Heard intends to file a motion to stay and will not oppose as to the second, third, and fourth causes of action, probably dealing with whether or not they have to pay the judgment. However, the first cause of action is ripe as there is an existing judgment against Heard, and New York Marine is seeking declaratory relief as to its rights and duties regarding that judgment if that judgment is affirmed or otherwise not disturbed on appeal. So I was wrong, actually. They do want to litigate and determine whether or not they have to pay that judgment if and when it becomes final. Seems like New York Marine doesn't think Amber's got a great shot on appeal, and they think that judgment's coming down, and they want to know whether or not they have to pay it. And I actually think I could see this going either way, right? I could see the judge staying it, waiting until we see if there's a final judgment post-appeal, or telling New York Marine, if there is a judgment, you're going to have to pay it. So maybe you want to get some lawyers involved in that appeal. Maybe you want to do what you can to fight that appeal. Maybe you want to try to push a little harder to defend Ms. Heard, defend this case, limit how much you're going to get paid. Maybe you want to make an offer, right? Maybe New York Marine is going to say, if we're on the hook for half of this judgment, I'm going to offer Johnny Depp right now $1 million and see if he'll take that and we can get out of this case. So we're not on the hook for $5+ million. Lots of different reasons why you could potentially try to argue this should not be stayed. Let's continue going forward. Temporary halt to scheduled depositions. On September 23rd, counsel for all parties agreed to continue previously scheduled depositions, provided that the depositions were moved to a date certain. So they had deposition dates, which is not uncommon. And then before you would agree to move them because they're so difficult to set, you're saying, I'm not going to agree to move these depots. No way. I'm not going to continue these depots. Everybody's always trying to delay us in these cases. I'm not moving these depots unless you give me a specific date we are going to finish these depots on. And they got that date certain. And those depositions were set for mid-November based on the agreed availability of the deponents and counsels for all parties. I've had cases where there's 15 different law firms involved. It takes months to set depositions. And while they're scheduling these depositions, and while there may be issues, and if there was a reason to stay or not set these depositions, that would have been the time to say it. But guess what? At no point during the rescheduling of those depositions was there any indication that jurisdictional questions would be raised. Assuming you know where you live and reside back in July, assuming you know when you were sued, assuming your lawyers know how personal jurisdiction works and diversity of citizenship works, none of that has changed since this lawsuit was filed against you. So why didn't you file a motion based on that earlier? Why did you let us waste time scheduling these depositions? Give us a date certain, meaning I promise I'm going to take the deposition on this date. Somebody's word used to mean something. Why would you do all that if you knew you were going to raise this issue as a motion to dismiss or a motion to stay? It's a good argument as to how this may be fishy. Accordingly, New York Marine believes it is appropriate for the depositions scheduled in mid-November to proceed as currently scheduled. And I would agree with them, although sometimes judges don't like to hold lawyers' feet to the fire. But I kind of agree with that position. Now, Travelers, who's kind of been on Amber's side, or at least more amenable with Amber, paying for the lawyers, trying to bring New York Marine in to pay for half of it, to pay for half of the judgment, things like that. Personal jurisdiction over Amber Heard. What is Travelers' positions? Travelers' position is this issue just arose. Travelers does not have adequate information to take a position. So Travelers' position is they don't have a position. Once again, what that proves is they have no clue if this is actually true or false or what facts surround her personal jurisdiction, her domicile, her residence, her citizenship, anything. Well, what's their position on Ms. Heard's request to stay this insurance litigation? Ms. Heard asserts that she will be prejudiced by this consolidated insurance litigation proceeding while the Depp lawsuit is still active. Travelers will not oppose her request for a stay on that basis. How? How is she prejudiced by this unless they stop paying for her defense? And they would only stop paying for her defense if a judge said and made a declaration that they don't have to pay for her defense. How is she being prejudiced by this going on? Bad publicity. The lawsuits are already out there. That these lawyers would also be having to work on this case. These lawyers are working on other cases at the same time as Amber Heard's case as it is. So how does this actually prejudice her? Besides like adding stress because she has multiple lawsuits going on at the same time, I just don't really know how this does actually prejudice her if both of these cases are going on at the same time, meaning the insurance cases and then the Johnny Depp appeal. Travelers is not going to oppose it, interestingly enough. I don't know what she's got on Travelers. Travelers understands that New York Marine will argue that it should be able to proceed with part of its case. Travelers strongly opposes a partial stay of the insurance litigation, which allows New York Marine to move forward in part as it wishes. That is interesting, and I think that's a good argument, right? As you read through these, like I always say, when you read these motions, a good lawyer is going to make you kind of come to their argument, especially if you don't know how every law works. Pick it up, be like, that's not how it works. But if you partially stay a case, that means the lawyers still have to work it. You still have to do depositions. You're going to be arguing whether or not this deposition or this discovery applies to count 1 or does it apply to count 2, 3, and 4? Because if it applies to count 1, then you get to do it. If it applies to 2, 3, and 4, then it's stayed. And we're going to have another motion in front of the court for the court to decide whether this has to do with count 1 or counts 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to have more motions and more hearings and more discovery and more objections and more motions to compel to determine whether or not this discovery applies to count 1, which is not stayed, even though the other ones are stayed. So that actually could be problematic. That's a pretty good argument. This would be prejudicial to Travelers and Ms. Heard as it would be highly inefficient. I agree. It likely will drive the parties into discovery disputes, which can be avoided by a complete stay or not staying any of the case. If the court stays the insurance litigation while the Depp lawsuit is pending, it should stay all of it. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think it could be all or nothing, but I still think they can go forward with the depositions that they had a hard time setting, already had to continue once, and got date certains on with all this counsel, including a lawyer deponent. I still think I would let that deposition go forward, but I would probably stay this entire lawsuit if I was the judge. There's too much going on, too many moving parts. I don't think it prejudices her that much, but the insurance companies are probably on the hook to pay for her defense. Let's figure out what happens in that case, and then we'll figure out. Here's the point. If this was in the beginning of the case, that'd be one thing, but there's already millions of dollars in attorney's fees. So I think for judicial economy, I would stay this case until after the Depp case is over, because again, maybe they'll just settle. You hope they'll settle. And I hate stays. Okay. I hate it. But the insurance company's a plaintiff, so I think I feel bad for them. All right. Temporary halt to schedule depositions. What is Travelers' position here? Ms. Heard has asked that the parties agree to postpone 2 scheduled depositions until the court has ruled on Ms. Heard's request for a stay, and Travelers has no objection. Well, isn't that nice? That Travelers has no objection to staying the scheduled depositions of the lawyers they hired, who apparently shoved out New York Marine's lawyers as a result or as part of the Depp v. Heard litigation. How shocking that they agree with Amber Heard that they don't mind if that gets stayed and pushed out. Because that's where some damaging info for Travelers could actually come out. D, request for postponement and agreed modified pretrial dates. Ms. Heard requests that the court adjourn its hearing set for November 3rd, 2021 to December 1st, 2022. November 3rd, 2022 to December 1st, 2022, or another date convenient for the court. If the court determines that it's appropriate to enter a scheduling order, the parties agree to the following pretrial timeline. So, if the court will not stay the case or dismiss the case, and they are going to go forward to the scheduling order, even after all these arguments and all these position statements by all of the different parties, they still had to agree on a scheduling order. If the court says that's all hogwash, we're moving forward with this case. And a deadline to hold a private mediation is 7/31 of 2023, 8+ months from now, almost 9 months from now. 8/10, deadline to notify the court as a result of mediation, post-mediation status conference, 8/14, 8/24, non-expert or lay discovery cutoff, 9/18, expert disclosures, initial meeting, who's going to be our experts, what are they going to say, then rebuttals a couple weeks later, expert discovery cutoff, and my birthday in 2023, and then 11/6, the last day to file all motions, and then 12/14 will be the pretrial conference, And then either late December or early January would be the trial. So we're still talking about 12 to 14 months from now before we even get to trial on this case, which if they stay the case, you can imagine how long this is going to take. Literally years for this case to get to trial. And as you can see at the bottom, lawyers for all parties were involved. For both insurance companies and Amber Heard had to agree to this joint scheduling report. And so it's very interesting. Amber Heard has two major arguments to push this and kick this can down the road. I'm stateless, so actually you can't even sue me. And we're appealing. So wait and stay this case until we get a final judgment post-appeal, because I think I'm going to get another trial. I think I'm going to win. So we don't need to decide who's going to pay this judgment just yet. The second one is one we all saw coming. We knew that was going to be her argument, at least part of it. Travelers is okay with it, and it even seems like New York Marine is okay to stay part of the case. But they want to know whether or not they have to pay that judgment now. And again, it could affect their actions, so I understand why they want that, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to stay part of the case and not all of it. We've had that happen before, and it really doesn't turn out well. But the stateless argument is really interesting. So I'm waiting to see what information they get about what actually makes a person stateless, what Amber Heard has as far as evidence of her statelessness, and then what their specific case law and precedent says about that. I'm very interested to see how those arguments develop into the future. And I'm surprised that they didn't do that research and make those arguments prior to agreeing to stay the case. There's no way the judge is going to dismiss these cases. But it kind of seems like everybody's reserved to the fact that the judge is going to stay the case pending appeal. And sometimes you can tell that when lawyers write motions. Sometimes I go into a motion to continue where I don't want to continue the trial and the other side does, and I'm going to fight like heck to not get this trial continued, but I know how the judge is going to rule, especially depending on the judge. So I'm kind of reserved to the fact, and I tell my client, listen, probably going to continue the case. And it seems like the insurance company lawyers are probably telling their clients, listen, probably going to stay the case. But stuff's happened in the appeal, as we've already discussed, because this is Saturday for you all. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of these insurance disputes here that Amber Heard still finds herself in. Are you surprised she's trying to dodge them? Are you surprised she's trying to delay them and stay these processes? Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. Hit that like button if you do enjoy this Amber Heard and Johnny Depp content, because it seems like it's never ending. And if you all want to continue to watch it and listen to me talk about it, then let me know by hitting that like button and getting in the comments and sharing the videos with your friends. And of course, subscribe and follow me on social media at Tragos Law if you haven't already. That's all we got for this beautiful Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.